Be careful, Anakin. You're running out of limbs.
I'm pretty sure this is the real reason Anakin turned to the dark side. 2005 was a pretty big year for Star Wars. Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith movie would be released that year, finally showcasing how Anakin Skywalker fell to the dark side and became Darth Vader. It was a flawed but still very enjoyable film, definitely among my top 3 favorite Star Wars movies alongside The Empire Strikes Back and The Last Jedi. Naturally, considering that this was a very big movie release, it couldn't go without accompanying tie-in games, of which there were 3 main versions. Well, technically 4 if you count a collection of plug-and-play minigames based on the movie you connect directly to TV, but we have to draw the line somewhere. Today we'll take a look at the console game for PlayStation 2 and Xbox developed by The Collective. It's a lightsaber-based brawler with a number of dueling mechanics. In a way somewhat safe and traditional for movie-based games, but then again, Revenge of the Sith has a fair share of action in it, so I can't say that the choice of the genre is entirely unfit. Like many movie tie-ins, Revenge of the Sith is one of those games that could be truly great, but a number of flaws, clearly caused by strict development timelines, have led to a product that has a lot of potential, but ultimately doesn't quite reach it. So let's see how the game fares, as always with the help of my Stasocritic scoring system. My name is Stanislav Kostyuk, I am a game designer, and this is my review of Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith for PS2 and Xbox. As always, we start with design. This category of Stasocritic has the biggest weight, 4, because our experience is defined mostly by the way a game is played. In terms of pillars, Revenge of the Sith focuses on pretty much one thing only: combat within a Star Wars wrapper. You use different combos and force powers to kill enemies, thus getting experience points depending on the efficiency ranking, and then between levels use those points to upgrade your force powers and get new combos. That's pretty much the entire game. It's very straightforward, but there is nothing bad in that. In fact, the underlying core of the combat system is nothing short of fantastic. It's incredibly well thought out, very basic at its foundation with your standard combinations of light, strong and critical attacks, but then depending on how you use combos you can transition into enemy juggling, air combat, area of effect attacks, dash moves, grapple combos, and that's only if we take a look at lightsaber combat specifically. There's also various force powers for you to use. The problem is that there's too much clunkiness in implementation, something that definitely could have been ironed out more had the development time been longer. For example, a lot of modifiers relate to whether you push your stick towards or away from the opponent, which would have made sense for gameplay happening on a 2D plane, but in 3D space it's very finicky. Oftentimes, because of how fast-paced everything is, you're not pointing exactly where needed. Initiating an air launch requires you to push the stick towards the enemy alongside the heavy attack at the 3rd hit of your combo, and it is much trickier to perform than one would think. It doesn't help that all these alternate attacks happen with some sort of a delay, which again makes everything feel clunky, even though the basic attacks are all very responsive. There are some advanced little mechanics, like if you've been launching to air yourself, you can press jump to get out of that predicament. The problem is that this mechanic works only when you're partially on your way down, which not only makes the game feel unresponsive, but also you might not even learn that the mechanic exists unless you happen to try it at that particular moment. This is one of the reasons why I've never figured out how exactly to escape enemy grapples, force grips and so on. While I did have successful grapple counters, for example, it felt random as it's difficult to understand what and when you actually have to do. Every problem is magnified by the fact that absolutely none of your attacks can be cancelled. And you can see in the footage how fast-paced everything is and why lack of attack cancelling is a problem, especially in the middle of a combo. This is particularly noticeable during duels, considering that your block move is actually not instant and has a pretty significant wind-up before it becomes active. And lastly, there's simply some problems with the detection of contextual action conditions. For example, pressing critical strike on downed enemies should make you stab them on the floor, but it really seems to have a 50-50 chance of happening. Though ironically enough, we don't really want to kill enemies too fast. You see, the rank meter that defines the quality of a kill is actually filled up by hits, not enemy deaths, and starts decreasing if you're not hitting anyone for some time. Meaning that if you kill an enemy with less hits, your meter is filled up less. This creates a very weird dynamic, especially when it comes to enemies that block you. If you want to get more experience points, you're actually interested in trying to not break their defenses, so you could rack up that combo meter higher and only then start killing as fast as possible. This actually could be pretty interesting if a game would be built around this mechanic, but Revenge of the Sith is not, and honestly you're better off not caring about the ranking meter at all, we'll have more enjoyment that way. In the end, there is this huge dichotomy between how fun the core of the combat feels with so many potential combos and choices, and just how clunky it actually is. Even when you're doing some pretty advanced maneuvers, it still doesn't feel like you're in total control. And mind you, it's not that the combat is broken or anything, far from it, especially considering that some of the more basic moves work very consistently. It's just that the system could have been so much more with all the required elements already being in the game. But even flawed combat can be saved by some really fun levels and good enemy variety, both of which are pretty lacking in Revenge of the Sith up until a certain point. In the first third of the game, what you'll find is mostly linear corridors with practically the same types of enemies over and over again, with pacing being broken up by moments where you have to force jump somewhere, force push an obstacle, find a rudimentary secret, shoot from a turret in a quite boring way, or cut a door or a panel with a lightsaber. And there's a lot of doors and panels for you to cut, don't you worry. It's something that gets pretty stale relatively quickly. In the middle of the game on Utapau, the levels become a bit more interesting with some environmental dangers that you have to time to avoid, and sections where you have to move from arena to arena that have unlimited amounts of enemies, but still it's not something that really fixes the issue. Everything drastically changes in the last third of the game after Anakin turns to the dark side of the Force. Just for the purposes of comparison, let's check out two levels where we play as Obi-Wan, level 2 and level 13. In level 2, you fight some droids, go on walkways fighting the same droids, destroy some power generators, go on more walkways, destroy more generators, more walkways, more generators, more walkways, more generators. By the end of this 10-minute level, you're pretty much going through the motions. Level 13, despite being twice longer, 20 minutes in length, never gets old. You'll start fighting clones, then get caught into a battle between clones and droids, then you'll have to fight some clones on walkers and jetpacks, then you get to a section where you have to fight clones while others are firing at you from afar, and you have to figure out how to best deal with them, then you fight a gunship, then you jump onto a huge walker and have to destroy its turrets while clones are coming out to stop you. Night and day. It's not that the levels in the beginning are bad or anything, but the difference in the variety is astounding. It becomes so much more enjoyable to play, and it's just a huge pity that this is something that happens when the Revenge of the Sith starts coming to an end. Though of course we can't talk about the game without mentioning the lightsaber duels spread throughout the campaign. These are without a doubt the highlight of the experience. Every boss has unique fighting style and behavior. Even with all the flaws of the combat system, these fights still feel intense and exhilarating. I suppose it's no wonder then that the game also has a duel mode where you can choose any of the bosses to fight against an AI or another person in local multiplayer. What's cool is that you can use all abilities that these characters have when you fight against them in the single player campaign. This is a great way to prolong the game's longevity in case you're interested in this type of gameplay. There is a bunch of other additional content in Revenge of the Sith in the form of bonus levels and co-op levels, but most of them aren't that interesting in comparison, most of the time representing fighting with waves of enemies. So with not much else to discuss, let's open up all the scores for design. I will assign a 6. Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith is a promising game, but it doesn't fully deliver. The combat system from a theoretical aspect has everything it needs. It actually would have been quite fantastic had the game not stumbled with the practical implementation part. And levels, while never being bad, become truly interesting only in the last third of the game. A pity, since you can literally see all the potential the game could reach had it been given some more time to cook. Let's talk about context. This category has a weight of 1 as it's about things that enhance the experience rather than define it. Story, plot, characters, motivation, etc. While Revenge of the Sith is obviously a game based on a movie, in this section we always discuss how adapted games handle everything on their own without relying on the knowledge of the source material. What is commendable enough for a movie tie-in game, which often require good knowledge of the film they're based on to understand what is going on, the overall plot of Revenge of the Sith is clear enough even if you haven't watched the movie. But I suppose it helps that the storyline of the third Star Wars film isn't that complex. What's important are the details. And details are what makes the game's representation of the storyline hit and miss. Partially, this is because of what the game chooses to focus on in its dialogues, cutscenes, and the footage it takes from the movie. For example, while the film The Battle of Coruscant is a pretty lengthy action sequence around 25 minutes in length, it still makes it a 1/5 of the movie at most. In the game, that whole sequence is literally 1/3 of it, 6 out of 16 main levels. However, it does show very well the friendship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, especially in their banter.
Use combination attacks against those super battle droids.
Tell me something I don't know.
But then it gets weird. What is really a 10-minute action sequence in Utapau spread around several scenes in the movie gets prolonged to 3 levels in the game, while the overall 40 minutes of development that gradually provide more and more reasons for Anakin to turn to the dark side is essentially truncated into a couple paragraphs of briefing text before one of the missions. And what's interesting is that Padme has been purposefully cut from the entire equation, positioning Anakin's turn to the dark side as a pure matter of politics and desire for power. And while this is certainly a valid approach for the purposes of adaptation, the turn feels even more sudden than it does in the movie due to lack of any build-up. Also, despite Padme being cut from the game's story, Anakin still mentions her in the fight against Obi-Wan.
You turned Padme against me!
Weird. Speaking of in-level dialogues, sometimes they feel out of place. For example, Mace Windu can't seem to decide if he wants Anakin to fight him or not.
Stop fighting! I am not your enemy! Come on, fight me!
And Obi-Wan being sassy towards Anakin during their Mustafar duels certainly doesn't help his pleas to get the former pupil back to the light.
What's the matter, Anakin? Afraid?
After Obi-Wan defeats Anakin, it instantly cuts to Darth Vader rising in his suit and then Obi-Wan giving some random baby to some random people on Tatooine. I mean, it's not like in the context of this game's story Anakin had a wife or anything. Anyway, should we open up all the scores for context, I will assign a 5. The Revenge of the Sith game provides a reasonable enough adaptation of the movie's plot with some nice little details, mostly in the first third of the game. But by and large, it misses a lot of elements that will transform the game into a properly engaging story. Character arcs are lacking, stakes are not well defined, and the resolution of everything is pretty sudden. Time to discuss aesthetics. This is another category with the weight of 1, as it's again about things that enhance the experience rather than define it, this time through visual style, sounds, music, etc. Revenge of the Sith is one of those games that looks absolutely fantastic on screenshots and from afar, but when you're actually allowed to take a look at the details, it starts to fall apart at the seams. Don't get me wrong, there's actually tons of absolutely fantastic visual details in the game, like the fiery burnt metal that's left on droids or doors when you cut them, environments are very well built with a lot of care and attention, lightsaber effects are awesome. But then, look at these animations. And the capes. And how some of the moves are looking very weird, it's like the arms on the models are too thin and not entirely connected to the bodies. Some supposedly epic moments feel very stiff and lifeless. The lip movement can look somewhat weird on close-ups. But then when the camera zooms out from the action a bit, it all looks great again. And sounds great, of course, using the sound effects and music directly from all the Star Wars movies except Episode 3 itself. My guess is it hadn't finished recording yet by the time this game had to start finishing up its development. Another aspect that I have to mention is the voice acting. While the sound alikes brought in for different characters are all great, some of which are not new to the franchise, for example Obi-Wan and Anakin are voiced by the actors from the 2003 Clone Wars cartoon, I can't say that the performances always feel inspired.
We're about to become a lot thinner. Quick, back into the car.
You first, Master.
There's no time to argue. Go! Next time we're taking the stairs.
Also, the characters during levels can sometimes talk too much without practically any pauses.
I'll take that. This keeps getting better. Stay back. Someone programmed you to talk too much. Another junk pile.
You're the one who keeps talking here, Obi-Wan. One other curiosity is that when you're near secrets in levels, the character remarks that they feel disturbance in the Force or that it is strong here. These lines play during cutscenes as well. So should we open up all the scores for aesthetics, I will assign an 8. Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith game undoubtedly feels incredibly epic in scope, and there's simply a lot of attention to details. But this attention to details makes everything else that doesn't quite fit all the more noticeable, like the hefty amount of weird animations, uneven voice acting, and weird dialogue design. Let's move on to cohesion. This category has a weight of 2 as it's about how well the game connects all of its different aspects together into a singular, wholesome experience. Revenge of the Sith definitely does some interesting things, like how after Order 66 the Force Stun ability changed to Force Lightning for Anakin and Jedi Mind Trick for Obi-Wan. There is definitely elements in Revenge of the Sith that make it feel like the Star Wars wrapper matters. The duels, the overall core combat mechanics related to lightsaber fights, even the fact that to unlock doors you actually just break through them with your saber, all based on an iconic and memorable element from the Phantom Menace. And if the game wants to block progression, then it puts in a shield which you need to first take out one way or another. All of these elements definitely make it feel like you're playing a game within the Star Wars universe. You can't simply change the skin without affecting anything. But there's also just a lot of stuff that's your typical brawler fare that doesn't quite fit, like the whole kill rating system and how it affects progression, the way usage of the Force sometimes simply gets delegated to specific spots that you have to interact with at arbitrary moments, rather than through natural extension of your already existing Force abilities, stuff like that. That being said, it can't go unmentioned how Revenge of the Sith definitely takes advantage of being a tie-in experience. Some of the action scenes that were cut from the movie are introduced in the game, and then there are some moments in the film that are just alluded to. For example, the movie shows a little bit of security recording of Anakin fighting Sandralig, while in the game this is a full-fledged duel level. These sorts of things definitely help in creating the feeling that this is an extension of the movie experience. This is why, should we open up all the scores for cohesion, I will assign a 7. In many ways, Revenge of the Sith is a typical action brawler type game with traditional for the genre mechanics put in just because, well, it's a brawler, they have to be there. But there's still enough distinctly Star Wars elements put in to make it feel like you're playing a proper Star Wars game. And now our final category, emotions. The most subjective part of my reviews, but also one with the second biggest weight, 3. Even though this section is all about purely personal feelings, at the end of the day, these feelings matter a lot. I actually have never played this version of Revenge of the Sith back in the day, due to being mainly a PC player, like most people in Eastern Europe at the time. I didn't own any consoles except a Nintendo DS handheld. So the Revenge of the Sith game I actually have the most experience with is the version for Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS. I did wait very much for this particular game to be released on PC, but alas, it got into the pile of sadly cancelled Windows ports. So when I decided to play the game for this review, I was actually quite excited. I knew that I probably shouldn't expect anything groundbreaking, but was hoping for quite a bit of fun anyway. And, well, I didn't have a lot of fun at first. Let's just say that my enjoyment was directly proportionate to the quality of the levels. At first I thought that this game was okay, but it's probably going to be just a one and done deal for me. I did like the duels against Duke and Grievous, but due to the reasons mentioned in the design category, I wasn't quite feeling it in terms of gameplay. I usually have more fun with the basic but polished mechanics, rather than very deep mechanics that are pretty clunky. And then the attack on the Jedi Temple happened, and holy shit! After that point, it honestly felt like I was playing a different game and I literally couldn't stop, just wanted to keep going, clunky mechanics be damned. After completing the game, I instantly started going through all the bonus stuff, including the other version of the final fight that leads to an alternate ending, various bonus levels, in one of which you play as Yoda, and in another you go through Mustafar level that has much more platforming involved, which made me think that it's an aspect that was sorely missing in the main campaign overall, and I just wanted to play more of the game. But here we get to an interesting question. I actually don't know if I would want to replay it from a new save at least. So I guess should you open up all the scores for emotions, technically what I should assign is something like 8.5. Revenge of the Sith happened to not quite fit fully any of the two criteria I can assign to it, but I think in such cases it's important to be positive and always round up rather than down, so 9 it is. At the end of the day, yeah, the beginning was just fine, but I did end up enjoying the game a lot, so can't complain there, can I? Let's summarize everything. After all scores on their weights are taken into account, Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith for PlayStation 2 and Xbox gets a final Stasocritic rating of 68. It's a pretty nice game. It could be a pretty damn good game, but sadly it lacks the polish to achieve that. Though it is certainly not as bad as a bunch of reviews of the era said it is. Reading those makes it seem like the game's only real fault is not being as good as the original God of War released a couple months earlier. That, combined with a general dislike of movie-based games and the Star Wars prequels, leads to reviews that all seem to strangely agree that attacks that can be cancelled is the ultimate unforgivable gaming sin. I mean, it is a problem, but in the context of Revenge of the Sith, it also is not something that actually ruins everything or something. So I would say that if you happened to not play the game because of these reviews, yeah, ignore them and try Revenge of the Sith out anyway. It's nothing groundbreaking and is definitely flawed, but ultimately, it is still pretty fun regardless.